So before we talk about the Zealot Canticles, can you give us a little bit of history about the crossing? Tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. In 2005, I had been living in Wales for a couple of years and had previously been a long time in Philadelphia with a bunch of different professional choirs. And I had a group of singers who always sang together and just loved it. And we were back here hanging out, and somebody made the suggestion, why don't we get together and do a concert just for the heck of it because we love singing together. And we said, sure, let's do that. And it went really well. And we never intended that it was going to have like a second concert or then a season or on. And it just kind of grew out of love for doing it and love for investing more and more in new music and an audience that continues to grow even today. And quite frankly, love for each other. I mean, we have a community really fortunate to have a lot of people who are invested in new music.
Yeah. You talk about being invested in the music, and you do so much in the way of contemporary music and bringing contemporary works to the world. I assume it's sort of a form of evangelism for you because you really have to believe in what you're doing in order to sell that.
Funny that you should say that when we're going to talk about zealotry.
Right. Well, that was my segue.
That's brilliant. It is. I'm not the type of person who runs out and grabs people off the street and hits them over the head with new music or ideas. But you are right that, when, your almost your entire life is invested in collaborating to create new works and works that, we feel are relevant or resonate with people's lives right now, whether it be about the environment or social issues or whatever. It is in some ways, evangelism in terms of, again, loving the product and wanting people to know about it.
Yeah. Well, and much of the music, and certainly Zealot Canticles is sort of at the top of this list, has a sense that goes beyond the music itself. There's a lot in the way of social responsibility, a lot in the way of commentary, and a lot in the way of exploring the world around us that's going on in this particular piece, as expressed through such wonderful means and minimalist means. And I don't mean the music being minimalism, but just a couple of voices here and there, a solo clarinet, strings coming in. Very simple means get across these very complicated and poetic ideas. Can you tell us about the genesis of the Zealot Canticles? And then we'll get into the words and the music.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I really appreciate the comments because it is true that Lansing's found a way to turn a string quartet, clarinet, and 24 voices into, a really, really rich background that very seldom draws on its own richness, So, I appreciate that. This piece was born a long time ago, actually. Back in 2011, I asked Lansing to set some words of Wole Soyinka. He and I were both interested in this topic of the fine line, between evangelism, say, and radicalism, right? And so I was really interested in Wole Soyinka, and particularly in the plays, and we wound up then with 12 Canticles of the Zealot. And there was a particular clarinetist, Ixi Chen in Cincinnati that I wanted to work with. And so he wrote this about 10-minute piece. And on the day of the performance, I said to him, I really think that you have the beginning of an oratorio here, a major and important work. And I'd like you to write the rest of it. So it took us a while to get there. But eventually he fleshed out this rather amazing libretto that calls on all kinds of different texts from Wole Soyinka, and then made a 65, 70-minute piece of music that we added strings to have some textural differences and to give singers a break and that kind of thing. And here we are. We finally premiered it a year and a half ago, and then got it down on disc, and it's about to come out.
Yeah. What led you to these texts by Wole Soyinka? Were you familiar with his writings and these poems?
Yeah, so I read a lot, I mean, not as much as like Harold Bloom or somebody, but I try to spend a lot of time reading, and I particularly like reading plays, which, may be because you do them in one sitting, right? But I really like reading plays because they have identifiable characters whose stories are being told, and basically what I do as a conductor, particularly of a conductor who always has words in front of them, is telling stories. I'm a storyteller. So Soyinka, was a very, very active playwright in the 60s and in London and in Nigeria, and has many, many allegorical plays that really fascinated me, and that's kind of how I initially got involved with his work. But he's a very thoughtful speaker, and whether that be through speaking from prison by writing in little scraps of paper, or whether that be speaking directly in an awards ceremony or whatever, a lot of those words have made it into this piece.
Yeah. And speaking of those words, a lot of them don't pull any punches. I mean, you've got some really dramatic readings, I would say, in here.
Yeah, I love there's a moment in the fourth movement where he goes, "I intend to be blunt."
Yeah. Understatement of the century, right?
Yeah.
I like looking at the 10th canticle, the Dog in Dogma, which is full of all kinds of pugilistic language.
That's a good word for it. Yeah. Yeah. And it's, that's such a bear for the soprano.
Yeah.
I think Becky Seiler just like nails it. And she's got this choir behind her that are making spitting noises.
Yeah. Well, there's so much drama in this piece. I know that the recording has just come out, but has it been considered to do a staged version or a semi-staged version of this?
It's a really good question, and it's something that I've thought about. It wasn't conceived that way. It was really, it was conceived as an oratorio, more or less, with the choir as the main character. But it's something that I really, considered, because there are these three soloists who come in and out of the piece. And in the way that we do things at the Crossing, they're always going to be a part of the ensemble, because I'm really interested in how the community relies on the individual and the individual relies on the community. So at any rate, no, it hasn't yet, but it's certainly something that is in the back of my mind.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about the music itself and sort of the style of the music. I wouldn't classify it as really minimalist, although I used that word before. I meant it in the way that he uses shapes and forms, and small forms at a time. I'm interested in the instruments, and that he uses a clarinet in sort of a cantorial aspect throughout the piece. And I'm wondering if, to your knowledge, if there's any kind of purposeful design behind that, because you think of the Zealot, in historical context, it has Jewish connections. I'm wondering if, and the clarinet also, you think of it, in klezmer, and it has that kind of a sound to it, and I hear that echoed a little bit in this piece.
Well, it's interesting because the clarinet was there originally because of a clarinetist that I wanted to work with.
So the answer is basically no. It has nothing to do with any of that.
Well, no, I don't think that's true. I think, when the thoughtful composer picks up an instrument and actually thinks about what they're doing with it, right? They turn it into a character, and I do think that you're right that the clarinet plays a number of characters here, and some of it's this very longing, language, and some of it's this extraordinarily virtuosic, brutal language, nonstop, just like assault, and in a way, that's what I think that's like sort of Soyinka's in kind of the screaming that's going on inside of Soyinka's mind about the way in which we treat each other, the mind-boggling observation of the way in which we treat each other.
Yeah. Very poetic, but very graphic at the same time.
Yeah. And, and again, like one of the things I like about the piece, and it's very characteristic of the Crossings Commissions, is that it asks all these questions and it doesn't answer any of them.
Mm-hmm. Well, I love the way that the piece ends. And again, that clarinet comes in and sort of takes over with a long extended, soft series of notes or what have you. But the text in that final canticle refers Sermon on the Mount, and then there's like an Arabic greeting, an Indian word for peace, and then that's followed by a call to action. Really, sums up the whole piece, I would say, and you tell me if you agree with this, where he talks about ripping apart the camouflage of power. It seems like such a valid message for right now and here, even though these canticles were written, 16 years ago.
Yes. Well, I think the choice of this text at the end is both poignant and frightening, because the way in which the speech is set to music, it comes across very, very much as this sort of priest-like character becomes a zealot right in front of our eyes. And, this extraordinary singing at the end, which Elijah Blaisdell is singing, only then would we have concluded our final assignment with history. And it's this very, very high climactic thing that, kind of, in another situation would rile the troops and indeed, inspire them to action.
Yeah.
But what action? That's the question.
Well, again, it goes back to leaving the question unanswered, at least as far as the material goes.
Yeah. Draw your own conclusions and then act as you may.
Yeah. Do you have any kind of, I don't know, for lack of a better term, like hopes and dreams for the kind of effect that this sort of music would have in the world today?
It sounds like I'm laughing cynically. I guess I'm laughing cynically. Okay, I'm laughing cynically. Sorry. I don't mean to. It's just that for me, music is like not a healing sort of thing. I know it is for a lot of people, but for me, it's a mind and emotion activator, and always waking me up. So I don't have any aspirations that a piece like this is going to suddenly be played at a major international conference of the United Nations, and that everybody's going to wake up and go like, you know what? I don't know why I didn't think of this. We should just be nice to each other, right?
It could happen. You never know.
But on the other hand, why even bother to make a piece like this if there's not some sort of hope in there somewhere, right? There's hope in the clarinet. There's hope in the voice. There's hope in things that breathe. There's hope in the words themselves at times. It's designed for every listener to hear, to be able to have the space to think on their own. And I think that we all, either consciously or subconsciously, we all do actually act on our reactions to art.
Well, if nothing else, I mean, it will introduce a lot of folks to the writings of Wole Soyinka and do it in such a way that the music kind of illuminates what's going on.
And that very, very valid point, an excellent point, in terms of this author, could be better known here to good measure.
Yeah.
So, yes, agreed.
The album is called Zealot Canticles. It's from Innova Records, featuring the choral chamber group, The Crossing. And Donald Nally, their conductor, has joined us today. Thank you so much for sharing this music with us here on FM 91.
Thanks so much, Brad.